Hello, welcome back to the yt-napari tutorial series. In this second video, I'm going to give you a brief tour of the yt-napari plugin, walk you through just an overview of all of the current features to get you started. So we're going to talk about loading YT data from the Napari GUI using a doc widget. We'll also load in data from a Json file, and then we'll talk about loading YT data from a Jupyter notebook into Napari using yt-napari. For this tutorial, you'll want an environment manager, conda, virtual env, pyenv, virtual env, and fresh Python environment is easiest for installing Napari initially. And I recommend Python 3.9 or greater. We actually set up an environment in the last tutorial with YT and Napari, so I'm going to be starting from that. And so you should go back and watch the first couple of minutes of the first video if you want the steps for setting up the environment initially. And again, thanks to CCI for a couple of grants that made this work possible. And with that, I think we are ready to go. Okay, so first off, we're going to activate our environment that we created last tutorial. So check back on to the first few minutes of that one if you need a hand creating an environment. And we're going to install yt-napari now. So it's just pip install yt-napari. It should be pretty quick. Actually, I already have it installed in this environment, but it shouldn't be much slower for you. It's a fairly small package. And then we can start up Napari by typing Napari and hitting enter, and then we have our Napari interface. And so when you install yt-napari, it registers as a plugin with Napari, and so when you hit the plugin tab here, the YT reader should show up. And this YT reader is the little panel over here, and it's more or less a one-to-one mapping of creating a fixed resolution region for a field. So you specify the dataset via file name, the field you want, the extent of your selection, and then it'll load in that field at a fixed resolution in order to load it into Napari. So let's actually go through a simple case for that. So let's go select good old isolated galaxy. Ignore my terribly messy directories, please. And then let's load in the density field. We want to take the log of that field, and then let's modify our edges here. So let's go from 0.48 to 0.52 in all the dimensions so that we're pretty zoomed into the center of the domain here. Let's keep that resolution. If you wanted to specify these edge units and these edges, the left and right edges, in different units, you could type in any string unit here that YT would recognize, and it should work for you, but we'll just keep that at code length. And then when you hit load, it'll take a second, but if you pop back over to the terminal, you'll see all the normal YT loading outputs. And after a second, you should get our nice density field. And you can, switch to 3D. You can check out the last video for an overview of the different options here. But yeah, so that's that. And if you wanted to load in a different field like temperature, you can just type in temperature here, hit load again. And behind the scenes, there's a little bit of caching going on so that you're not opening up the data set over and over and over. So makes it a little bit more performant, but there we have our temperature field. Cool. So future tutorials, I'm going to go into more details about specifics to the widget here, but for now, let's move on to the other ways that we can load data. So the second way to load data is actually through this file open files command. So it's a little tricky because like when you want to read data from a YT data set, there's a number of processes you have to go through in order to get it to the form the image array form that you need for yt-napari. And so the way this is implemented is using JSON files. So So actually close Napari for now. And in this directory, I have a sample JSON file that we're going to open up. So in a future tutorial, we'll step through this JSON file in a little bit more detail, but for this purpose of this tutorial, let's just do a brief overview. So you'll see generally that this maps directly to the GUI loader that we looked at a moment ago. So there are different fields that you can specify. So in the data field, you can specify a list of dictionaries that specify both the data set as well as what selections and fields you want to load. And so this is set up to give the same image that we loaded in previously. So we're going to load an isolated galaxy, and then we're going to load in two fields, temperature and density. We'll take the log of both of those, and our left and right edges are the same, but now in units of kpc instead of code length. And we'll do this at a resolution of 300 pixels in each dimension. And so now, when we go back to Napari, we can hit Open Files and go and select our sample JSON. And when we do that, it'll trigger the YT loading, and it'll cycle through both fields and load them in so that we get out, once again, our isolated galaxy density and temperature field. One of the benefits of using a JSON file versus the GUI loaders is that you have a nice record of what you actually loaded in. So you'll, forever have this sample JSON file that specifies exactly what data set you loaded and the selection you made. And you could, for example, send that to somebody if you wanted to give them the same starting point that you had for visualizing your data. Great. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the last way to load in data. So we're going to open up Jupyter Lab. And let's start a new notebook here. Cool. So first off, let's import some things. Import yt, import napari. Now we're going to import from yt-napari viewer a scene object, and we'll talk more about what exactly that is when we actually get to using it. So first off, let's load in, once again, good old isolated galaxy. This time we're going to use the load sample function from yt. And we've already looked at this in Napari a few times, but just to remind you, we have our density field. Cool. So previously in the last video, we went through the process of loading manually into Napari, but this time we're going to actually use yt-napari to simplify that a little bit. So first off, let's actually create a viewer. So this will be linked to our notebook now. Then, right. So as I showed in the previous video, when you're loading in data image arrays into Napari, you have to think a little bit about the coordinate system you're using. And so one of the things yt-napari simplifies is the process of making sure all of your different regions line up. So the way this works is through the scene object. So let's create a yt scene. And now when we add images, we're actually going to do it through this object here. And what this allows us to do is actually add things in a much more yt way. So we can define a left edge. Let's define it relative to our domain center. So we're going to go 40 kpc on either side. Right edge. And 40, 40, 40. KPC. And then let's use a resolution of 300 by 300 by 300 again. Okay, great. So we can add our selection by using this add to viewer function. And there's a number of options here. I'm just going to very briefly talk about just getting your data in here. A future video is going to go into a lot more detail about this. But you provided the Napari viewer you want to load it into. And then the rest of this is like a normal YT function. So it's the data set, the field we want, a left edge, set equal to left edge, right edge. If you didn't provide these, it would use just the whole domain by default. And we hit that, and it'll go through and actually add our layer. You can see also that it applies a default color map for you. And let's say we want to add another field. Let's add the density. And there we have it. We have our density and our temperature field. So you can see that was a lot quicker than loading in data manually like we did before. So behind the scenes, this will go and create a fixed resolution region using these left and right edges, and then load that into Napari for you. So that's all I'm going to cover today. In the next videos, I'm going to I'm going to have a series of videos that are more detailed on each of those 3 different methods before some videos that get into some more exploratory analysis. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.